now we are live. Cool. All right, so that took longer than I'd hoped, but 12 minutes, not the worst. It's taken me longer to set up sometimes. Well, mostly the cameras. So I'm hoping this just means that it's working. This might be the first no conflict between Zoom and YouTube. Ooh, is that?
I was just pulling it up on YouTube. But when you're on YouTube, you can mute, right? Because I don't want it to interfere with your Zoom.
I believe so. What I want to know is, can I get people to interact with me? Like, can they speak? And I just don't know how to do it. Engage with your audience. Q&A, start a poll. I don't know. I don't know if it behaves like, I need to watch some videos.
Yeah, and I think somebody like Malika might know. I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing so much research. It's like there's always that next thing that you missed. All right, I need to learn my lesson from that portrait and not paint at such an angle to my painting. That really messed me up.
Marianne?
No, not Marianne. Marianne was from Life. That demo I did, I was painting at an angle, and you can tell because it is so skewed. It was like a mistake that I wouldn't make normally. I mean, not to make excuses, because every painting has its foibles, but on that painting I was very skewed, and I even had a Monday student say, oh, you had the mouth crooked, and it was respectful and everything. I always take constructive criticism, so I appreciated it, but it was just like, yeah, and it was something that was really bothering me throughout most of the sitting. But when you're not square to your canvas, that stuff happens. And I say it all the time for cast drawing, where you have the board in your lap, and I say how the painting, the board, the paper is closer to you in the front and further from you the further, on the top of the board, as opposed to an easel, which is fairly flat. And yeah, I mean, it's like you know better, but you do it anyway type thing.
You didn't upload her to Instagram yet, right?
I did.
You did?
Although it's weird though, every time that I've posted a short, it really took off. Like, it'll go into the hundreds really fast. This one's like stuck at the 20s, and I must have done something wrong, or maybe it's just not a popular one. But the thing is, on Facebook, it's on that. Oh no!
What I see is.
Oh.
I see your show advertisement for tonight. I see the piano girl, it looks like.
Are you talking? Oh no, you're talking about Instagram. I'm talking about YouTube.
Usually you post Instagram too, though, right?
Instagram, yeah. Well, I should post Instagram. Yeah. Sometimes I get a little behind because I'm just trying to juggle too many platforms. But
so where is she posted on Facebook?
She's on YouTube as a short.
Okay.
And again, it's fine, right? I just always want to know why.
How big is your board?
I guess I should measure that. I cut it to fit one of the canvases I already had. Jeez, I mean, it looks like
24 by 36?
No, this is more like maybe 24. But it might.
It's not like a square, is it?
Well, if the camera isn't perfectly square to the board,
Okay.
it can.
It does look like it's square now. Okay.
I don't know if it's truly square, but at least it's somewhat close. The YouTube camera is pretty skewed. I got a new tripod, but I don't really like it. It's very flimsy. Yeah.
Okay.
It's very flimsy, So, I mean, it's nice and light and adjustable, but you so much as breathe on it and the camera goes flying. I've already dropped the camera twice.
Is that the one that was at school before?
No, this is a brand new one.
Oh. We have a really sturdy one now for school.
Yeah, I found that in the kitchen at the gallery building.
Oh, it's really nice.
I think I have 2 participants now.
You mean on Zoom?
On YouTube.
YouTube. Okay.
Hello. Welcome, Claude. All right. I'm just trying to find my scale, which is going to be a reduction from real life. So again, I'm just gonna create the simplest shapes possible. I'm not going to worry about, whether the proportions are exact, but I'm gonna take some guesses, and then I'm going to reevaluate. There's no way that's going to fit. All right, I got to go a lot smaller. So one way around this idea of just that really tricky thing of just trying to get it to fit is if I did a thumbnail sketch. And then I would know, all right, so this is, it's definitely not square.
Okay.
So, but that's a good thing because that means that I've got more vertical to play with than horizontal. I don't want to leave too much negative space down here. I should put more oil on this board. See how it's kind of eating all the paint?
Yeah.
Just give me, oh, darn it. Somebody's trying to call me. I guess I missed that call. Oh, well.
You said somebody tried to call you?
Yeah.
Oh. Can you see who it was?
No, it's my business line.
Okay.
All right. That doesn't look right. Okay, so 2 of these gets me to the bottom. That's not enough space. Okay, so again, this is the reason that I want to do this a little on the slow side. I want these complicated shapes to fit just right, and I'm not starting from a thumbnail sketch, which right now is kind of feeling like a mistake. But I make mistakes. It's going to be hopefully an issue that I resolve pretty quickly. Well, that's not much smaller, is it? Jeez. Well, I can at least raise the table that much. Okay, so half. This is half the. All right, I'm going to get it eventually. This board is absorbent, more so than I would expect. Although I didn't put a whole lot of grease down. All right, so I'm finding my scale, this abstract composition. I am going to clean this up a little bit better than what I'm doing. And feel like I need to get more oil down. This is just kind of getting eaten alive by the board. Maybe I only put 1 coat of Raviskin glue on this. But we'll get it. If I'm not committing to too much on this sitting, maybe I'll get to that color block in, but I'm not going to push it if I don't feel like I have the time to pull it off. Yeah, much better. A lot more oil. All right, so this is going to be a better scale. Boom. Okay. So now I've got a basis of comparison. Yeah, much better. You're like, how can you tell? I don't have anything yet. But
you just moved that mark up, right?
I did move it up, but I did it on the, I used the shell as a measuring tool.
Yeah, I was thinking that it did also needed that.
Well, it just depends on the scale. So right now I'm just kind of feeling my way through it. So now that I sort of like my proportion of the shell to the basket, I can say, okay, 1 shell over equals this wall of the basket, which gives me plenty of room for my other shells here and here. Again, nothing is really drawn out. It's just going to be the shapes that I am estimating in place.
Yeah.
And everything's going to be based on everything else unless I come up with a conflict, and then I just make some decisions. So right now, this egg can move over, and so can the triangle. And the triangle could use a little bit more slant. And that's going to fit better. So again, it's going to look maybe a little sloppy for right now, but I know where I'm going because these marks that are made by me. But I don't want to really refine anything.
Right.
It's just too early for that. If I have to draw out a shape of shadow or something, that can really help for getting just that sort of second level confidence of, the shapes fitting within the outside border. But don't really want to go any higher than that. So if the decision gets to be to increase the height relative to the width, I'm just going to sneak all these a little bit smaller and keep the height where it is, make it relative. Okay. My lines are a little thicker than I like, and I'm going to trim them up. So they're not as descriptive as I like. Again, it's probably going to look a little goofy for just a little bit because all these shapes are so tentative. They're not meant to be right yet. They're just supposed to be just something I can understand as a proportion. like I said, if I just have to clarify some of my drawing by turning it into light and shadow, so be it. Okay. So this is going to be the lace tablecloth. I'm not bothering with the frills just yet, but it's got a really sort of jagged tablecloth base. And I'm wondering, it would be nice to share the image with YouTube. I just have to figure out what's the best way to do that. But anyway, we're starting to get a design that's going to work, I think. And so these lines aren't very descriptive yet because they're just really thick. So I'm going to take a clean kind of eraser brush and trim them to be a little bit more accurate when I'm ready for that. Not really that ready for it yet. I want to thin these lines. I know that for sure. And don't really want to guess as to what's what. Like, one shape from the next, but also where's the edge? Is it the inside of this line or the outside? So I'm going to make little ideas like that from a place of, well, what's the best decision? Yeah. Okay, so if I follow this curve, I'm clear into here. And that doesn't work. So where? Yeah, that'll work much better. When everything's abstract, it might look goofy to most people, but it just gives you a lot of freedom. And so I'm pushing things around based on just what's the best way of getting me a little bit closer to what I want design-wise. The still life setup is pretty striking in that it's got a lot of contrast notes, which is going to be really, really nice. I don't really have any allegiance to making it exactly this basket, but the basket does have a anatomy to it that I want to make sense. It's not like I know how to weave baskets, so I better copy at least somewhat of a believable structure based on what I see rather than kind of just hoping for the best. And so when I do a final cleaning up of these lines, they'll be very informative. They're just suggestive right now. Okay. Again, if I started this on graph paper, I'd have a pretty clear indication of how to balance this on center lines and you know, a basic proportion already worked out. But I didn't, so here I am. line work is probably going to get a lot heavier just to be very descriptive. So, Liz, you have the photo. I need to find a way to share it to other people.
Yeah, I was trying to look and see if I could figure that out for you, but so far I haven't been able to.
Okay, I appreciate it.
But so I'm muting and checking again, okay?
Okay. So this is going to be a pretty high detail painting, and you can see that I'm not really that mired into detail yet. I'm just connecting shapes, and that can be anything from a shadow to a plumb line to a proportion measurement, and I can even follow some of these curves through the still life into just little connective moments. And so if I follow this down as a straight line, it ought to hit with a little negative space to that corner. That's not a precise measurement. It's just ballpark, because I'm going to really trust my eye to make sure that there's a convincing pattern. And the more complicated the shape, the more I want to simplify. So in this case, you know, we have some very simple curves here for this this shell, and it's sort of measured, but it's sort of not. It's only going to be as measured as you know, like a height to width relationship, and maybe some shapes of shadows. That's what I'm doing now. And like I said, I've got a lot of cleaning up to do with the lines, and that's perfectly fine. I don't expect this stage to be accurate. I just expect it to give me a guess that I can work with, take some measurements, and my favorite measurements are just a jigsaw puzzle of light and shadow within the outside border. If they fit like a jigsaw puzzle, then I'm doing okay. And I'm only looking for okay right now. I'm not looking for super precise, because I want the creative freedom to move these things around without being disappointed or measuring every little fascicle, which is a fine approach if that's how you're oriented. And I know many artists that are. That's not the way I like to work. But it's definitely not wrong either. It's just we all have our way. I like this idea of estimating and training my eye. I like to feel out the composition and let it suggest some things. Well, I feel like when I measure every little thing, and sometimes I do, especially for commission, I just feel like I kind of turn off my eye for one, my own observations, which I generally trust more than measurement, and two, for the sake of just having an open mind that the painting might tell me something in these little decisions that I make, something will be left behind, and if I'm careful, I can study when there's something I didn't expect that I like and not get rid of it. And I've made a lot of fun decisions based on, you know, this more general approach than with just, you know, super precise measuring systems. And you know, I never trace, but I don't judge people either. So if you're one of my students, I say don't trace, because we want to struggle through the time and practice it takes to train your eye and train your methods of measurement and all that stuff. But if you're more of a measure heavy approach, or, you know, these big abstract shapes, more of a suggestive approach, you know, I'm not telling you right or wrong. I'm just saying that I have a preference, and I like the creative freedom to be able to take guesses and adjust rather than be beholden to a measuring system. But some of my more complicated paintings do start with at least a loose thumbnail sketch on graph paper. And that this time I'm just skipping that step. It could be a mistake. We'll see. I have a feeling by the time I get to the 3-hour mark, I'll have simple shapes that align pretty well, and I'll like it. And if not, you know, it's okay. So working from simple to specific, this shell was super simple, and now it's just a little bit more complicated. It's going to get even more complicated later when I'm done experimenting with these shapes. But when I got that to its sort of good enough stage, then I wanted to switch to here to get this to its sort of good enough stage. And sort of good enough sounds like it's a bad thing, or that I'm just being sloppy. It's not. It's just the level of perfection that I need to move on. And right now, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm just looking for a little bit of an idea where I'm going, and then I'm going to look for clarity, which just means that I'm going to make sure that all of my squint level shapes have a readable edge to them, even if eventually they'll need to be very subtle. I'd rather err on the side of clarity for this sitting. This seems like it's a tangent edge, but I'm just going to put the skinny version in, and then I'm going to add all these little spines and things like that. These shells are very craggy. I don't even know if you can tell they're shells yet, and that's okay. I really need to get you the image, so you know I'm actually painting. Just for a moment, I'll turn the camera and show you what I'm looking at. Whoa. There it is. It's pretty washed out in the camera though. Let's get you to eye level. So I'm just kind of working out some of those edges of that really complicated white cast on the inside. not going to bother with those little slats of the basket until I like those sort of transverse weaves, the ones that go horizontally across. So I'm going to work those out first because that's going to be sort of the bones of the basket, if I'm thinking of it like anatomy. And they're going to form somewhat of a system of how the weaves go around it. In this case, they just kind of wrap from flatter here to really curved in here. But some baskets have that sort of over, under, over, under, over, under. And once I figure out that system, then I can make it my own. And then other baskets are really kind of rustic and even a little bit chaotic, but they have to be held together somehow. So when you can figure that out, then you can make better decisions. Just like with human anatomy, if you understand that system and what it has to be, then you can definitely use that anatomy to problem solve and make it really accurate. You'll know the limitations of the bones and muscles so that you make sure that it makes sense. Even if, like, say you're working from life and you have the model shifting a little bit, which even great models shift a little bit. And then you have to still make sense of it by the end product. And that's what makes painting from life so just amazing for learning how to paint, because again, it just we're not beholden to photographs and we're not beholden to models. We're creating paintings. And whether the model shifts or the camera's distorted or whatever, at the end of the day, we have to make a painting that makes sense. Well, I guess not necessarily have to. There's plenty of styles that don't really rely on realism, but if you want it realistic. So I'm shifting this opening over. And I'm going to take a little bit off the top of that curve. So just a little bit of a power shift, but I don't have to move this edge because I'll just turn this into shadow. That's going to be better. So now some of the landmarks of this really complicated shell here are working a little bit better. How you doing, Malika?
Good, how are you? I'm sorry. I didn't know I was muted.
I'm really tired now. I had to shovel out my car and all my driveway and stuff. And so I just laid on the couch. I was like watching a little bit of a movie, and it was just like, oh man, do I really feel like doing this? It's like, well, committed now. So you got to pardon if I'm a little sloppy on this one. I'm tired, but
yeah, I know shoveling snow is a lot of work. I mean, snow is a lot of fun to play in, but clearing it out and dealing with it, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, I don't mind.
The thing is, by next Saturday we'll be in the 60s, so all melt away.
Then we'll all be sick.
No, hope not.
No, I hope not too. But you know how, like, now it's warm, now it's cool, now it's warm, now it's cool. Like that's a recipe for sick right there. All right, so I'm kicking my cord and my camera is going haywire. All right, so one thing I'm going to do to trim this line is I'm going to get an even finer brush, and I'm going to really carve these edges and give myself a really just sort of nice rigid outline. Not with thick paint. I don't want it to be thick. I don't want it to have texture, but I don't want to. I would rather err on the side of clarity over softness. The softness will happen later, but right now I'm just kind of feeling out the shape. So this big brush is doing its sort of job laying down paint.
Is this umber you're using?
This is green umber. It's by Williamsburg.
And that's a beautiful color.
Yeah, it's nice.
So the seashell because Liz just shared the image of the still life.
Mm-hmm.
That looks very familiar. I feel like I've seen that one before in a painting.
Yeah, I recycle some of these.
No, that's a beautiful seashell.
It's a beautiful seashell. It's at a different position. Before it was really prominent on that painting, also with lace, called the Shell Collection. I did the video of it.
Right.
And yeah, I reuse these.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much still life props you can have.
Yeah, no, I mean, I could see some people just saying, "Oh, I've painted that before. I'm not going to do that again." But
no, I don't think that anybody minds. I was just wondering if your grandma painted that seashell in a still life.
I wouldn't doubt it. She did some seashell paintings. I don't recall this one in particular, but I did steal it from her collection of seashells. Okay, stealing isn't the right word. I'm sure she'd be really happy with me painting her stuff. Can't really talk to her about it, so I'm just going to make that bold assumption.
I sent you a link on how to upload to YouTube, but I think you have to have like so many viewers or something.
You have to have a minimum viewership?
Yeah, at least from what I read. So I sent you the link. When you get a chance, just take a look at it.
Snobs. Well, that's weird. Why would they require you to have a minimum for just putting a image on there?
Yeah, but there's something about the image and the community and stuff for kids and things like that that they take into consideration.
You mean like the seashell is bad for kids to see?
No, not that, but I mean people are probably posting other things that.
I mean, it is a pretty wild seashell.
No, I'm not talking about you.
I mean, I wouldn't want my 5-year-old looking at this seashell. Liz, I'm not making fun of you. I just don't get the policy. That's all.
I know. Just take a look at the link when you get a chance.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, not now.
I think I would do a better job doing videos if I could pull myself away from the painting, but
for those who are interested in seeing the image, if they go to your Instagram account, it's there on the page.
Yeah, I probably should take a break and make sure it's on YouTube. Especially, I do have a very cherished participant.
And I'm not really the best one to ask about YouTube, but I tried a little bit.
You tried what?
To research it for you.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when I'm doing this really abstract blocking, sometimes I just look at it and it's in my mind. Sometimes you can just say like, well, how is this going to work? But when you stick with it enough, I've just found over and over again that just taking guesses at some of these shapes, a lot of times they just work. And right here, I'm finding that by adding that lip, this little collection of abstract shapes here is working. It's just, it just needs that next little point of clarity. And so I've gotten a lot better at believing the abstract shapes that I'm putting down. And I think that's a big deal. Like, I think students have a hard time looking at the early stages as like, okay, this is going to get me there. This is going to get me to that final product. And I totally understand why that would be nerve-wracking. But this is just a matter of adding that next shape. And if I can't get that next shape to work, then, at least I'll have a good clue as to how to make it work. Because I'll have all these measuring points. The other thing is getting that consistent head tilt. Like if I keep changing my point of view, then I'm going to get myself in a lot of trouble. So if I'm not pretty disciplined with my head position, you see that a lot with sight size, like the tendency to want to paint from that close-up view. Like you walk up and then you made that one little observation you did from across the room, and then you just really tempted to keep going. So this isn't sight size. I respect sight size. I just don't like using it as much as some other people. But that's the tendency. It's like you just really want to make that next mark. You just really, really shouldn't. Okay, so this is starting to, I've gotten to my first little challenge here. And I think it's going to be a pretty easy adjustment. But again, that's the purpose of this stage. It's like taking guesses and then reconfiguring it with not only just comparisons to make it right, but comparisons to say, well, what's optimal for the painting? And you just can't see everything in your mind's eye. You can sketch it out ahead of time. I've said that a couple times, but even then, sometimes you're going to be inspired by something you didn't expect. And I'm really looking out for that right now. So again, it might just look like a little bit of a mess, but it's going from simple to specific about the way I expected to. I didn't expect this to be an easy drawing, so I say this pretty often, is that the more complex the shape you're drawing, the more you have to simplify. And the more you simplify, the more it might look a little bizarre at first. And that's just more than okay. So I probably am going to scumble the background, so I don't really have to worry about the nature of the edges as much as, you know, their artistry, but I do want the clarity. So when I'm rubbing it like this, it's just because the line, you know, was corrected. And so I like to make the adjustment first and then do the correction so that I can do a comparative analysis between what wasn't working to the new line that I'm hoping will work. And it doesn't always, but you know, I do the correction first and then erase. And just clarify the line. Just when it's too hard to read the edge, then it's just not doing its job. And I'm probably going to outline all these shapes after I like the configuration of lights and darks. But I probably will not do every little little point on here, especially if I'm going to get into the background. I don't want to do precise drawing lines and then lose them, and I don't want to paint the background around tiny little detail shapes. For me, that doesn't feel efficient enough. I don't like to paint backwards. I don't like to work very hard to get something precise and then lose it. And I definitely don't want to paint big areas like background like this, you know. So I'm going to keep the edges pretty simple and keep it about the big shape connections and give it just a little bit of clarity and make sure that all the major shapes coalesce with the outside border and the shapes of shadow. And then I'm going to blast in the background, and then I might clarify some of those things. But I might just wait to do that with opaque paint on the next sitting, which to me is going to be a lot more efficient and a lot more powerful. It's just whether or not I can get some of these shapes to read strongly on the first sitting so that when I come in on the second sitting, I have a point of clarity. I don't want to really guess as to what the lines represent. So if I get an efficient start today, my plan is to go ahead and block in the squint level shapes. And if the drawing takes long enough to get to, say, like, I don't know, midnight or so, I'll call it and leave them with just kind of really bold outlines so that I can see the edges of the shape. And it sounds like maybe a contingency plan. It is a contingency plan, but it's not a bad one. It's not like mistake or success or failure or anything. It's more of just time management. I don't want to rush the major shapes, and I don't want to get into detail unless I like the big shapes. And every time I say I'm going to stop at midnight, it'll probably be 1:30. So I'm also keeping that in mind. So again, these little spikes on the edge of the form don't need to be in on this sitting. And so if I could just track that inside of the basket, take some clean, more of like an eraser, and lift up this light in here. And I have to do that on multiple passes just to, every time the brush hits the surface, it's going to put the paint onto the brush. These outlines would only be problematic if I paint so weak on the next sitting that they'll come through. Well, I'm not going to paint weak. That's just not part of the way I paint. So that second sitting is going to be pretty opaque. Only the darkest shadows are going to have that sort of translucency, that little bit of glow to them. So I'll keep them relatively thin, but not thin, not by some people's standards. And so not really worried about preserving the board coming through, especially not the green umber. Although the green umber's not bad. I'm going to have quite a lot of warmth in that shadow. There's a feel you develop in oil painting that is really hard to teach. Feel comes through experience. And so you'll see that sometimes I don't even go back to the palette or wipe off the brush to go from adding a line to subtracting a midtone. If I wanted to go back to light, I would have to do a little bit more work. I'd have to either keep a very clean brush, or I'd have to have solvent nearby, or some very clean medium, or a brand new brush, because this isn't going to erase back to the board. It's going to smear it just a little bit. And it just depends. Do I really need a really bright mark? The shapes are coalescing. I see a little bit of a problem with this spike in regard to the basket, and I have to make a decision. Do I want to kick the point out a little bit and then bring this little spike over? Because I don't like the tangent edge. I don't like how it's just butting against this edge of the basket weave. Alternatively, I could move the basket weave. And so here's that second little challenge point. And challenge isn't bad. It's just we're working out the kinks. And you'd have to be super precise to not have to move things around, because even if your plan had no tangent edges in it, did you place that brushstroke perfectly? And maybe you do. Maybe you very slowly map it in, or maybe you did a very precise sketch to start and you just trace and transfer it. All those are fine ways of painting. It's definitely not the way I started this. So I have done it that way. I don't get as good of results doing that. Some people do. When I competed against a bunch of really great artists out in New York, and some of them worked just that way. They did a site-size drawing, and they spent like, we had 6 days to do the contest, and some of them didn't even paint till day 4 because they wanted to get that site-size drawing perfect before they started painting. Well, I was hammering away, and I was able to go a lot more complex than they did, but they had a really nice drawing. So I'm not saying my way is good and their way is bad. I'm just saying that my strategy kind of bakes into the cake that I need to do adjustments, and that I'm going to be problem solving the whole way. It's just, I know it's coming and I look for it. Whereas if I did the perfect, precise drawing with the idea that I wouldn't have to do any corrections, then, well, we'd be going a lot slower. And slow isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, that's something Nancy also tells us.
What?
What was that thing she said?
What about measuring?
She said, something about slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Yeah, that's what she said.
I mean, there's truth to that. I don't really look for perfect precision off the bat, but my eye is really informed by a lot of anatomy and pattern work, just over a lot of experimentation over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And I don't really get rattled that I've had to do a lot of adjustment to get the shell that I want. And it's starting to take shape. I see how these shapes coalesce into something usable, and then the next shape helps define it. So like there's a little ridge right here. Do I have the negative shape? Does this curve hit me to the right point? And the answer is yes. So it verified a base level of accuracy. And now I'm seeming calm, but on the inside I'm partying. People who don't know me that listen are going to be like, what an arrogant ass.
I thought that was funny.
It was.
And so this painting is going to get quite a lot of sharp outlines. And I'm just kind of building my way up to it.
Okay. Is that going to be like Pinot?
Is it going to be like Pinot? I would hope. But
not going to be like Pinot, because Pinot is very soft. I was looking at his work.
He has a lot of just nice, bold brush strokes, though.
He does?
Yeah. I think.
Well, you're painting the crunchables, those 2 red apples that I have.
Uh-huh.
I think that's like the edges of the apples. I feel like you're going at first you try to go hard, but then you made them soft.
That painting started with just a really quick sketch, and I was just thinking I was just workshopping in my head. It's like, well, how do I make it interesting?
Yeah.
And so then I thought of making the background so dark as to make that little glow of red happen.
Yeah.
The problem is that when I got it outside of these rich lights, which I normally turn the dimmer down a little bit, but I didn't, and it started relying on that really bright light source just to read, and then I had to come back in and brighten it up. But I wanted, the point of the start was that I wanted those reds to read as pure reds, not pink or orange, or, you know, I wanted that strength of the red in there. So it's just a little bit of a rework. And then the, my gosh, that thing sunk in like crazy. That needed varnish badly. I'm surprised you liked it enough.
Well, I mean, you know, you said that if you put a little bit of red in your painting, it sells.
Yeah, that has a lot of red in. Spot of red sells the painting. That's not my line. I think Fritz has always said that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, spot of red sells the painting.
He does say that, and I've heard that too before.
So you'll see him like add a red cardinal or something. It's like spot of red sells painting.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. All right, cool. So now the shapes and the negative shapes are working better. I'm going to trim this handle. I have to start being wary of how high this is going on the composition, but I think I'm going to pull it off. I just want to get that shape of shadow in place, and that'll verify it a little bit. And so the shape of shadow goes like right through here. I get that nice reflected light, and we'll just fill it in as a simple shadow. And then right about here, it starts getting skinny and curving in. And then I could just drop a plumb line down and make sure everything's kind of hitting the right points. So like I said, I haven't really worried about grabbing that sort of precision brush yet and getting the outlines that I want. And if I were going to go into the big color masson, I wouldn't even bother, because then I would just work into the lines with that squint level color. And all my outlines would disappear wet into wet, which is, like I mentioned earlier, the precision isn't there because of that. Like I don't want to carefully protect detail notes. That to me isn't fun at all. So I don't want detail. I just want measuring points. I want to be able to feel that there's a proportion here that leaves me the right negative space here, the right sort of comparative proportion, the right plumb line. Like this hits exactly where I want it to plumb line wise. That is maybe a little short, but again, how important is that? I'm going to say it's not very, because this could be a slightly smaller basket, and that would be better than increasing this or re-wrangling the entire painting to make it fit exactly right to this basket. So if it hurt the composition at all, I would make the change. But I'm kind of deciding right now that it's not really that important. Again, not to skip a step or make it easy, but to give it that honest assessment. I'd have to go up to here to make that work, as opposed to trimming all my lines to make this smaller, which I wouldn't be too bad, but I don't think it's necessary. So I'm not going to. That negative space works just fine for me. Now, I also know my framer.
You do?
Yep. So, so in order to make this edge fit just a tiny bit more, I'd get a whole extra 1/8 of an inch if I put a spacer down here and shift it all the way up on the frame.